Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. We're going to take a cruise into the customer experience today with Rick Morgan, and you probably know Rick. I'll tell you a little bit about him in just a minute. And mapping your digital journey. That is a pretty heavy title there. Rick, what's that mean? Please explain it to me too. Will you hear while we're at it?
Well, we'll certainly go through it, George, in a few minutes when we go through some of the slides. But it's
Yeah.
basically understanding that our culture, our society has gone through a digital transformation. And what we really want to focus on now, and of course it's one of it's a top subject that people are talking about online and offline, and that
Mhm.
is this whole idea of the customer experience. And we'll get into that in more detail. But it's basically understanding that the way you market, the way you communicate today has been transformed, and pretty much all marketing today is digital. Not to say that there isn't traditional marketing in it, and that we still need to pay attention to that, but we need to start with digital and understand what the significance and differences are.
I know you're really into it. I know you have a slide that kind of explains that if people really want to come back to. Let me see that next one, please, if you will. And there you go. Okay, I got it. Learning to adapt. That's the big word, I guess, right there. It's changing so fast. Last week we had on Monday morning we had Steve Anderson and on the new machines that are coming, like Watson and all that. Boy,
Yep.
it's scary, and that's really you're just jumping on the bandwagon here. Yeah.
Well, it is our culture and all of the technology is evolving extremely fast, and learning to adapt. I a person that I follow a lot of time by the name of Brian Solis came up with the term. Um, uh, in terms of this whole adoption, and if you don't do it quick enough, it spells the end.
Yeah.
You've got to learn to adapt and do it quickly.
So well done. Well, let me tell a little, just for a minute. They'll tell people. A lot of people know you because you've been around 100 years. Let me see your picture here, and we'll go to there. I want to show people who you are. You're in Boulder, Colorado. My daughter's there, so I get to see Rick now and then. We see him. He was named the one of the most 100 powerful people in the insurance industry. I tried to get on that, I couldn't do it, Rick. So I'm jealous. Okay, but well, that's a good thing. But you
Who
said
knows?
you had an agency there in Boulder in the early years. I remember that, and then you built Silver Plume, and just take a second and tell us what Silver Plume is, because a lot of people might not remember it.
Sure. Well, Silver Plume was something that John Ashenhurst and I created back in the late 1980s, and then we're joined then with Lauren Parsons. And the idea was to take all the insurance reference material, all of the ISO stuff, all of the insurance commentary. In fact, we used a bunch of your content, George, and had it on Silver Plume.
Oh, good.
And it was at the time, I mean, this is just mind blowing, but it was on a CD-ROM. And computers at that time didn't have built-in CD-ROMs, so we had to sell separate SCSI CD-ROM drives for agencies to use. And then we built a carrier version of it, and then ultimately that was taken over and sponsored essentially. We got some seed funding by at the time was AMS, but which
Yeah,
became Vertafore,
yeah.
and then all of us exited Silver Plume when Vertafore was sold the first time, but it became a very successful and profitable business
Well, I remember
for
that. We
Vertafore.
we all used
Yep.
it. Everybody uses it, and I'm glad that you.
Well, it's Sage now. I mean, it still exists. It's just that it's online today,
Yeah.
and so Sage is the terminology, the product now, and it includes rating and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and then you
And
you became marketing director, I guess, of Applied. That was a big job, and of course, there's still
well, senior VP of marketing for
VP
Applied
marketing.
Systems along the way. Yep.
That was a big job, and then I know you work with Peter Van Archik as a consultant right now, and you guys do a lot of that on branding. And I've had you on here before, of course, and you're pretty much involved with ACT, aren't you?
I am. I'm the co-chair for the Strategic Future Issues Work Group for ACT, And actually, a lot of what we're going to talk about today came out of that work, because another work group that evolved out of the Strategic Future Issues work group was the Customer Experience work group. And it's something now that I've become very, besides interested in, I'm very passionate about. I think it's a game changer if we can learn and figure out how to really evolve the customer experience from either the carrier or the agency's perspective.
Well,
So,
it's a great background. Let's see where we go from here. Okay,
okay.
you're the man.
All right. Well, so I'm going to take a quote that was written on a blog by a guy that I follow who has a history of, I mean, he has a background of working in the insurance industry. He's not in the industry anymore, but he said a lot of what we're doing in the digital space and our digital communication, our social marketing, is being done all wrong, and we have to burn it down and start from scratch.
Oh, brother.
And I think that's accurate to a large degree. I think so many people got into it without any vision, without any plan, without any really overall strategy on what it is they were trying to accomplish. And maybe this is something you'll appreciate, George, because you've been a marketing guy in the industry for a long time, yeah, forever.
Yeah, right.
And the reality is that to a large degree, many agencies just do not do marketing. They aren't really marketing people. They're relationship building people, but they do struggle with marketing. And so I think when social came along, when people just jumped in, and they look at it a couple years later, 5 years later, 2 years later, whatever, and not knowing what they were trying to accomplish in the first place, they look at it now and don't know whether what they've done has had an impact or not.
Yeah.
Now, there's clearly some that's not the case for. There's some really very savvy agents out there that have done
Yeah. So,
some really great things. But the context that I want to talk about today is taking the customer experience and talking about it as the framework for all that we do in the digital space. In other words, thinking about the customer experience at every stage that they have a touch point with our firms, whether that's a carrier or an agency, and asking ourselves, what's the customer experiencing when they come into our website, when they see us on social media, when they walk into our office, whatever it happens to be. And that's what I want to use as a focus today. And one of the things I'd like everybody, well, maybe I'm going to do this first. Let's define it first, and then I'm going to have everybody do a little exercise.
Okay.
But the customer experience, and this came from an article I read in Forbes. The customer experience is the cumulative impact of multiple touch points over time, which result in a real relationship feeling or lack of it. And then again, to supplement that, it should be an emotional experience that exceeds your expectations and leave you with feeling good, satisfied, happy, surprised, or impressed. And the point is here, or one of the things, the distinction I want to make, this is not customer service. Customer service may be one component of a customer experience, but customer experience can start even before the person is a customer, or the shopper, the consumer, the client, even before you do business with them, they start experiencing your organization, your firm. So just to give people a little idea of this, I would like everybody to just close their eyes as they're listening to this, close your eyes and think of the very last time you had what felt like what you would define as an exceptional customer experience. So just take a second. Who did you come in contact with in terms of a business, a service, a product, and you went, wow, that was an amazing experience. So when you okay, people can open their eyes now. I thought that was probably long enough. But so when you think of that, when I think of that, George, I think of I bought a new computer recently from Apple, and I'm an advocate of Apple anyway. I've got an Apple Watch and an iPhone and all. Anything Apple works for me. But anyway, but it is because the customer experience, the experience I have had with Apple, whether it's in store or online, it's just exceptional to me. I mean, I feel good about doing business with Apple. Now, if we think about that, and I would challenge a carrier or an agency to go out and ask their customers to do the same thing and close their eyes. And the question becomes, do they think of the, does the agency show up in that experiment? Airlines probably don't. Maybe Southwest once in a while does for people, but typically, I mean, you don't come up, you don't start thinking of airlines or cable companies, for example. I mean, Xfinity, Comcast, that's just not going to show up
No.
when people close their eyes and think of a great customer experience, right?
Can I tell you what I thought about? I mean, 'cause
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to hear
done
it.
this before. I think about, we have something here called the Bull Ring, which is a restaurant and a bar in Santa Fe. And when I go there, the guy who owns it he's very verbal and so forth. And he comes in at a table and he sits down, or we usually go to the bar and then we eat bar food, and it's better. And then the manager is a woman, and she's funny, and she gives us a hug every time I come. And we walk, I mean, every time I walk out of that thing, I say, gosh, how do they do this thing? They do it because they care. They're right on top of you. And how many times you ever see that in a restaurant? I never had. But so mine's a restaurant, sorry. A restaurant and a bar. Okay.
Perfect. No, listen, it can be any product or service or firm can do this. And so what we're challenging the industry to do is to really think about that. Use some of the and this whole idea of the digital and the technology. Like the conversation you had with Steve last week. The idea is to use this. Technology isn't great just because it's new technology. It has to have a purpose and a reason. And what I'm saying is if we can use this new technology, if we can use these social outlets to improve the experience, then it begins to make sense. That's the burn it down part. Go back and think about how you're going to use all these new outlets, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or a blog or an e-newsletter or your signage or your office itself, to pull all that together to create an outstanding customer experience. So that's what we're trying to do here.
All right.
The other thing, this is no surprise to everybody, but this is the new customer, a millennial, and they're searching for you and finding you where? Probably in the palm of their hands. They're using their cell phone to go out and reach out and find you. And understanding that is key to understanding how we begin to think about the customer experience. Because the customer journey, it has a lot of different steps. And so even before somebody becomes your customer, they're going to be they're going to be in a discover phase. So they're going to get online and they're searching for insurance help of some sort, an insurance agent, insurance questions, whatever it might be. So as I mentioned before, even before these people become your customer, they're going to be out there looking for you. And what they're going to find, is your website, your Facebook page, your LinkedIn profile. It could be any of those things. It could be a blog. And what we have to ask ourselves again is, what's the experience when they're searching for you? If you have a really crummy website, for example, that doesn't even adapt to whatever device they're on, like a cell phone, and isn't responsive in that way, you've lost already. The discovery component for your organization stops. And you know what? This isn't new. Think back to Yellow Page ads. And I wonder how many people, when somebody was out there discovering agencies, went to the Yellow Pages and saw really, maybe badly done Yellow Page ads and went, that looks awful, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to call that person, Or in today's world, if you don't have a website, or if you don't have a LinkedIn profile or a Google Plus profile or aren't on Facebook, for many of those millennials, and others obviously, that's not just millennials, it's connected versus not connected society. If they're out searching and you don't show up, you don't exist in today's world.
That's
right. I mean, you just simply don't exist. And so this is how this framework of the customer journey begins to tie together and allow you to make sense of all that you might want to do with regard to your digital marketing or your marketing to a digital world. So let's look at some of those phases, and we'll just briefly talk about what that might mean. So in the discover phase, and I've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but people are out there looking for an insurance provider, a product or a service. And when we think about that, one of the other things that's really critical to understand today, and I mentioned this because so many people are starting with their journey in the palm of their hand and with their cell phone, is that it's important to realize that because we do now live in a digitally transformed world, you no longer can just tack on some digital capability on a traditional website or add it to your traditional marketing. What I propose is that it's important to begin to think about digital first. In other words, everything you do should start with the digital component, and then yes, there could be a traditional component that is added on at the end, but the vast majority of people now use digital to find whatever it is, whatever product and service. And we've all done that, whether it's a book, the restaurant you mentioned, any kind of product or service through Amazon. We Google everything. So we start our journey in a digital way, and therefore even the content now, so let me give you another example. If we have a website that is responsive, and what responsive means is that the website will adjust to whatever screen you're accessing it on. So it could be, that smartphone, it could be an iPad, it could be a desktop. It doesn't matter. It readjusts so that it presents properly. What I'm even saying is that the content, the structure of that site really should start with the digital. What we did before is or the mobile, let me put it that way, it should start from a mobile perspective. So what we did before is it was always about a desktop, and so it could be pretty robust, and it could have images and all kinds of stuff, and even the text, the content on that site could be expansive because you had a whole desktop screen to view it. Even though it can be responsive and reformat itself to be shown on a mobile phone, I maintain that the actual description, the content, the images that you use should be different today than they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago, so that discover works. So anyway, that's an example. Then an agency goes into the next, which is evaluate. So they found you, and now they want to know if you're the right agent for them, right, or the right carrier, because agents might be looking at carriers, and obviously the public wants to make sure that the carrier that agent is going to put them with is somebody that they can relate to and that they feel good about. So the consumer today is going to evaluate, the carrier as well as the agent. And how are they going to do that? Well, this is where content marketing comes into play. The value of your website, the value of the information on your website, and how it's delivered. So they want to know that you really know your stuff, right? I mean, it's not enough that you just exist today, that you just show up, that you just have a storefront. They really are going to look and pay attention to the kinds of things that they find on your LinkedIn profile, that they find on your Facebook posts, that they find on your website. And to that extent, it becomes, you can then begin to understand the value of a blog, for example. And because that's how they're going to begin to evaluate. And it could also be things like testimonials, and not just written testimonials, but perhaps video testimonials, or video description of coverages and who you are and what you do, and pictures of the office, and all of those kinds of things that are going to help that new consumer, that digitally savvy consumer, find you and then evaluate you. Then, of course, they have to make a decision to buy. And so the same process, the two steps prior to this help with this component, but
yeah, they do.
They want to know then that you're competitive, that once they do buy the product or service, that you're going to be there for them long term. And I suppose it's a fine line, I think, that you cross between evaluate and buy, because once they've determined that you're the right guy, then they are going to want to buy. And but here's the thing. So if we're talking about customer experience, really think about this. Our buy process today is archaic for the most part. We have all these paper applications. We can't take, we're getting better at this, but digital signatures are still relatively new. Our payment options, we can't take PayPal, we don't usually take credit cards, and so the consumer experiences a less than satisfactory customer experience in the buy process. And this is where I think the industry could do so much
Mm-hmm.
to think about what, we go through this whole process, they've discovered us, they've evaluated, now they want to buy, and now we're sending them forms, and we're asking them to, come in and sign things, and we're asking for credit, we're asking for checks, and it's like, can this really be, in today's world? Because the experience expectation is being set not by the insurance industry, but by the Amazons, the Zappos, all of these other organizations out there that do this buy transaction so much better. They make it so easy, so convenient, and this is an area where I think we fail as an industry, and we have to improve this. So, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that when Google Compare really gets going, or Amazon gets into the business, which are certainly possibilities, they'll do this a whole lot better than we do now. So it's important for us to do it quickly and get this right.
Good point.
The next part is where the customer service part comes in. Once they're a customer, every time they come in contact with you, you want that experience to be outstanding. But this is also where I think an agency's ongoing digital reach, their digital communication to the customer becomes important. So this is where e-newsletters can continue to have great value. And quite honestly, e-newsletters are making a resurgence. I think for a while they kind of dropped off the map, so to speak, but now we're seeing more and more people doing it right, and people liking them actually, and liking e-newsletters. So something to consider. It's a place where you can create, again, valuable content. It's a place where you can keep in touch with your customer, those kinds of things. So don't dismiss that as an opportunity.
You know what?
The other
Rick,
go ahead, George. Sure.
what we've done is at Agencies Online is, because I was, as you know, the biggest newsletter publisher for many, many years, and
Oh yeah,
we got out of that, thank goodness. It was okay, it was good, it helped, but at Agencies Online, we came to grips with that point, and we had a monthly one, we had monthly person, once we went to something different called News Magazine. And so our agencies, at Agencies Online that we serve, get a quarterly news magazine, but it's like 8 pages. It flips, those flip pages in the corners.
Sure.
And but that's why you have a lot of pictures and everything. It's just a different approach, and I think I'm beginning to think, well, not beginning. I think it's more effective if you can do that, but it has to really be good. We have people doing it, and if it's just not very good, it's still the monthly one's still working. I agree. Yes, I just want to tell you that we've gone that route now, and I think that's the future probably.
Well, and so that would be absolutely. Couldn't agree more, George. And even if they don't do an 8 or 10 page magazine, today you're talking about these newsletters. Yes, content marketing, the value of that content is important, and even the delivery, because in an e-newsletter now you can embed video, you can embed graphics, you can do infographics, you can do all kinds of things. You can do audio. You can do a podcast link in a newsletter. So you can do all of those kinds of things that become very, very important as potential ways of reaching out to your customer. And another area, of course, is your Facebook posts, which we all know that we're not supposed to sell on social media, not hard sell anyway. And so what you're doing is building relationships, strengthening relationships, interacting and engaging with a community, both online and off. And so this is where I think ongoing activity with, the right kind of activity with Facebook and or LinkedIn or Twitter make a huge amount of sense. Because it allows that customer, as they are a customer of yours, to keep in touch with you, in essence, to see what you're doing, to understand, to know who you are in terms of your personality, your values, those kinds of things. And so you want to use your social outlets to do that.
Yeah, you
And
know,
you're
I
focused
we
on that customer
yeah, well,
experience.
I agree, and every week I post I post Monday morning. I mean, it goes out to
Yes,
105,000 people anyway, but I post to LinkedIn and Facebook every week. This is so you'll be on LinkedIn and Facebook, like it or not, and I have 5,000 contacts there, so it goes to 5,000 more that way too. It really
sure.
helps. I hear from people all day long. Yeah,
Well, and one of the things I will mention here is that um, it's really a little bit off topic, but it is an important component of all of this,
go ahead.
and that is for people when they're thinking about the customer experience and the customer journey, to also pay attention to personal branding versus the business or the business brand. People want to do business with people rather than logos. And so it's very important for people to have that strong personal brand. When I say people, the agency employees, agency owners, producers, so they need to have a really nice presence, a strong presence, a strong brand on places like LinkedIn and on Facebook. Because what is also true today is that the organic reach for most of those services is decreasing. Your ability to get noticed, in other words, with a Facebook post
Hmm.
is dropped down to almost non-existent unless you want to do paid advertising, which makes sense. I mean, you can certainly do that, and I'm an advocate of doing a certain amount of that, but all of these things again are ways of if you use the customer journey and you think about what's going on in that customer's life as they interact with you or come in contact with you as an individual as well as an agency or a firm, then it begins to all come together. It's that customer journey framework that becomes so important.
Good.
Well, of course, then they, if you've done all these other things really well, then hopefully they renew, right? I mean, they're not going to leave you, but it's an ongoing effort. I mean, you've always got these touch points that go on through the life of the journey that person has with your business. And so you always have to be vigilant. You always have to be paying attention to that. And let me just say here too, another term that is used a lot is omni-channel. And omni-channel can relate to just all of the different digital outlets, but it also can relate to the difference between digital and traditional. And what omni-channel refers to is the smooth, the consistency between all the channels, whether online or off, and the smooth transition between them, so there's not confusion, and that whether they, as I mentioned earlier, when I was thinking about Apple, when I was thinking about my customer experience, was that whether that was online or a walk in the store, there's a good experience, an exceptional
Hmm.
experience. So my journey with them is always impressive. Always, I feel good about doing business with Apple. Um, and then the final stage is that you hope, you would like that all of your customers become advocates for you. Now, of course, not all of them will be, but an advocate really means that they're willing to, if somebody asks them something about who you are, or they're asking for a referral or a reference, that they'll mention you, that they'll say, I've had a great experience. My journey with this company has been outstanding. They wouldn't say that, but I mean, they recognize that their journey with you has been great, and they're willing to say to somebody else, hey, give these guys a call. I mean, that's the win. And further, many times when people become advocates of a firm, then they like, comment, and share on all of the social or all the digital outlets. So they read your blog and they make comments. They share posts that you have on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. They're involved with you. They're connected with you. And there is that transition when you meet one of your customers. At a golf outing or a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a Girl Scout meeting, whatever it happens to be, they're more likely to come up to you and say, man, I just had the people in your office are great. They handled this so well. I'm really liking the stuff you're posting because it's helping me understand the value of the products I'm buying from you. I really respect the values of your company. You get a sense for that with all these social outlets. Who you're doing business with becomes real to you. you understand their values, you understand their personality, and you feel good about doing business with them. And really that's really the bottom line of all of this when what you're trying to do. So just to summarize real quickly is that I hope the listeners just think about the customer journey, the stages of that customer journey, and use it as a framework to build their digital presence, their digital communication, their social media and digital marketing with that in mind. Keeping that digital journey as uppermost as the goal you're trying to accomplish. If you do this really well, the sales will come. The growth of your business will happen, and so that's it. I mean, I think that's
good.
It seems simple, but on the other hand, I think it's elegant, in the way it all comes together and makes sense to me.
I do too, Rick. I think it's some of those things that need to be said every once in a while. I mean, we kind of forget all these things, most of us, and we just go on with life, and you bring these all into focus, and I like that. I think that it'd be a good idea for agents who are listening to this to forward it to your staff, everybody. I mean, it's a good idea to do that. I mean, these, back to the beginning, I guess, but into the future. It's one of those things. So, listen, I want to thank you, and I know you can be contacted there, and you will. I've known you for many, many years, and you always respond. So, I appreciate that a whole lot too. No matter where you are, which is all over the United States these days, but you'll get back to them, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
All right.
I actually very much welcome the opportunity to discuss these topics. As I mentioned, the work we're doing with ACT and the work we're doing with ArtRack all tie into this. And
yeah, it's right on. It's right on schedule. Right on.
My work with ACT, we're
right
always
on point. I guess the word. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen. Thanks again.
Yeah, we really need. We want to hear from agents.
Okay, I'll tell him, go call him. Okay. And for the rest of you again, thanks again, Rick, and I'll see you next Monday morning.